Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
We're out here again, third week in a row. We got the girls out here in the pasture, and today Laura's gonna work, but she wants me to talk, so I'm gonna talk while she works. And so these two girls have got their favorite place here on the property, this little mound out here they like to go stand on, and they can see everything.
Oftentimes they'll just follow me, but I think there might be a little bit too intimidated by you. Come on, girl.
Yeah, so what Laura's saying is a lot of times they'll follow her in, but they don't really know me very well still, so they get a bit excited to see somebody as ugly as me.
You girls want to come? You want to come with me? Thinking about it. Come on. Come on. Come on, girls. Does this mean we're going to get fed again? Are we going to get another breakfast? Give them a minute to think about it.
So they'll kind of turn and look, but they're not really making any effort to come anywhere. There they started to just a little bit.
Often Abilene will be the brave one to decide to lead the way. Gosh, what's she doing with that guy? You guys want to come? Come on. Come on.
So I know it's probably hard for y'all to see off in the distance. Abilene's kind of taking a couple of steps in.
He's thinking about it. He's not sure.
So my question, Laura, is our attachment good enough that we're going to go anywhere with this?
Yeah. Well, it could take an hour or two.
Yeah, and so we've got to decide what's important. What do we want to work on today?
Yeah.
And if you want to work on that today out here, we can.
Well, see if we can get them to. Let's see if I can get them to detach a little bit.
Okay.
But she wants to come in now.
Okay, so is that real connection? When you're asking her to attach, she stands there.
I feel like with her,
And
she's
then-
still thinking about it.
When you're asking her to detach, that's when.
That's true. It is always on her terms.
Okay, so it's okay that she's wanting to come in, but you got to keep that pressure the same for detachment here.
All right.
And maybe on your end, recognize when you were asking them to come with you, you were mostly just releasing pressure.
Okay. Yeah.
And they weren't really responding to that, right?
Right.
When you started asking them to detach, you actually started applying some pressure to them, and that's the thing they responded to. And off they go. Well, and this is stuff they get to work on. Is when they feel pressure to detach. They don't have to take off running all the time, right? And they got down there a little ways, and then they stopped and turned and looked at us. So hopefully what we're going to see as we continue working with them is that the time they disconnect when they feel that pressure becomes less and less and less and less. And that even if they do kind of get activated by your requests, it's maybe only a few steps they take away, and then a few less and a few less and a few less until it's really not a big deal for them anymore. Ah. So I'd stay with Annie and ask Annie to head that way. She's gonna get too activated. Gotta catch back up with Abilene.
I need to drop the coffee.
Alright, so Laura's just heading back out. Alright. And she puts some pressure on them. Here they go again. You can see the same pattern from them. They're going to go in the exact same place. Going to come around behind the house and they're going to stop. So they've gone back around this way. So Laura's just going to make sure she knows where they're going. They're going to their little mound. She's going to make sure that they can still feel pressure here. Because really what they're doing right now is they're just resisting. And so Laura's attempt to keep the pressure the same. And it's a little more exercise in a bigger space. And so there's Laura off in the distance there, putting pressure on them. They're on their mound there. Yeah, this time as they trot off, they're paying a little more attention over here. They're going slower and they turn around and stop. Now, instead of just running like crazy, they're starting to think a little bit, which is good. And so now let's see if you can ask them to head that way again, Laura.
Convenient barrier, don't they?
Yeah.
Two ways around it.
All right, so they felt a little pressure from Laura. Moved up to that corner where they've been getting stuck. See, Laura puts a little pressure on them there. They've connected and thought about it, and now they're heading that way.
So then they need the exercise anyway.
Is our round pin open over here?
Yeah, I can
Yeah, I'm gonna drop this other baggage off here. Let him carry. Okay. I'm not helping her out any here. I'm walking through the gate she's wanting them to go through, so everybody's kind of gonna be. Okay, now I'm out of their way. There goes Abilene. And you see again, they're still running like crazy. So this is an important part of us even starting this work with them, is that in this process we can connect and be calm. Now we're seeing a little less. Of course, as they get over here to me, oh boy.
Abeline's so dramatic.
So Abilene had a thought there finally. And they head in. So one of these days, we want that to be a nice, calm process. But that's something we have to work on too.
What do you think, Tanner? Should we sort them out, or?
So this is all dependent on you. We got a lot of comments from people saying we're not ever going to do any good work with these horses unless we separate them. And I don't believe that. You see when they get separated how they feel.
I'll just tell you, the struggle I've been having with them is that Annie's quite happy to connect with me, of course, always on her terms, but she doesn't want Abilene to connect with me at all. And so she gets dysregulated, it seems, whenever I try to give any attention to Abilene. She chases her off. I'm fine. If you think we should just keep them both in here, or?
Well, so do we ever get to work on this thing you're talking about if we just separate them?
I don't know. I'm going to need your help with that then.
Okay.
Because I don't really know.
So what's the first thing that we've got to get them to do in here, now that you've got them in here?
Connect and be calm.
So they've got to calm down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And be able to connect.
Thank you.
And so this whole time we're working on detachment out there. Did they ever really calm down and connect in detachment?
Not much.
Not much. So that might be what I start with them too. Especially if you know they've got, when they're not calm, the ability to be just a little aggressive in the way they explore touch and attachment. I'd really want to make sure that they're calm in detachment before I move to any of that other stuff. And y'all bear with me while I position the GoPro here on my own pin. There we go. Try to get that all nice and straight for you. Ah. Hi, Abilene. So there's a good sign from Abilene. She actually came over here and looked at me a little bit. Good. So Laura's just got pressure on their sides collectively. See, Abilene's head has come down. She's kind of exploring. She's looking at me. Hi, Abilene. She stopped to even check me out. That's good. So hopefully we see that this is an improvement already over what we did last week. The amount of detachment it took for Abilene to really calm down and start checking things out. Seems to happen a little quicker here. Hopefully that starts to transfer to when we're out in the pasture, so that us coming in to work in the mornings isn't such a big ordeal. And so it really is possible to work with two horses at the same time. It's like having a conversation, being at a party with two different people at the same time, riding in a car with two different people at the same time. Your ability to focus your attention and to connect with both of them is the only thing that really matters in here. Can be two of them, there can be 10 of them. It's what you can tolerate and what they can tolerate. And you know, even though Laura's the only one in the pen, they're actually having to connect with me out standing outside here by this camera as well. So we're all capable of this dual focus. It might not be as good as if we can do one-on-one focus together, but you know, they already have a dynamic here, a relationship, these two horses, and that's really where they feel the safest, is with each other. And so we can do some real damage to our relationship if we just rip them apart. We can create some trauma and problems for them if we do that. Or we can help them be able to separate in a way where they feel safe. And we want to find a balance in there. We are going to separate them and work with them at different times one-on-one. But we also want to be able to work with them together here, especially when they're out in the pasture together and we want them both to come in. We'd like, when we put pressure on their sides out in the pasture, that they can walk and move like this, calm, connected. And Abilene's really relaxed a lot more in her body than Annie seems to be. You can see she's exploring. She's got her eyes and ears on everything, including Laura. Annie's still pretty anxious. She's just kind of moving around, feeling pretty activated. Abilene's starting to really get in her body and her head here and explore. And she turns in to stay connected with Laura. The big deep breath from Annie finally over here. And Annie's going to look at Laura. So they're both connecting with Laura. Laura's connecting with both of them. She really liked that they both kind of calmed and looked at her together, and so she took a step back. Yeah. So Laura just moved to attachment with. Are you focusing mainly on Abilene?
Yep.
Focus mainly on Abilene. And this is how we're going to start to work on what Laura was talking about earlier. Anytime she interacts with them and tries to interact with Abilene, that Annie really gets aggressive and chases Abilene away. So a good start would be to get Abilene to attach and see if Annie can regulate herself a little bit. Yeah, Abilene attaches nice. Laura takes some steps back. And Abilene reaches out to bite. So we're looking at Abilene. You know, remember last week when we got into this closer space, her breathing got really shallow. You could still see a lot of tension in her body. Oh, there's a big deep breath from her. As Laura steps away a little. So that's good to see. We want to see more and more of that. So, anytime that you're focusing on Abilene and Annie tries to interfere, you can't let the pressure off of Abilene.
Can't let it off of Abilene?
Yeah. So, if Annie starts chasing her away, you've got to just keep that pressure the same on Abilene, because that's where Annie gets to learn how to deal with that pressure. And Abilene gets to learn how to deal with Annie. You can't fix this bullying between them. They've got to fix that.
Well, also, in a sense, every time that dynamic happens and I take the pressure off of Abilene, I switch my attention to Annie. Annie's getting reinforced in the way.
Right.
That's what she wants.
Yeah, so it's working.
Yeah.
Right? So that has to stop working for her. So in case y'all didn't hear what Laura said is, whenever she's been focused on Abilene and Annie interferes, then Laura's attention goes to Annie. And that's been reinforcing that behavior for Annie a little bit. And so now what we're going to focus on instead is I've asked Abilene to connect. And I'm going to maintain that request. Good job, Laura. And see, we get to see how Annie, look at her taking that in. And I want y'all to think about why this is a thing for Annie. Anytime Laura connects with Abilene and really focuses on Abilene, and Abilene really connects with Laura more, Annie feels alone. And when Annie feels alone here, with nobody to connect to, she feels unsafe. And when she feels unsafe, her go-to seems to be anxiety and aggression towards Abilene. And so this is where some detachment one-on-one with Annie is going to help. But really, this is a good spot to be, is asking Abilene for attachment and connection and letting Annie experience that. And so for Laura, it's going to be important that even though she is connected with Abilene, that she's staying connected with Annie through detachment. Because that's what Annie's going to have to do. She's going to have to learn how to stay connected through detachment. Oh, that's a good breath, Annie. And see, Abilene's still looking back at Annie, seeing if she's connected there. But she's also staying connected with Laura here. And Annie's actually, she's looking over at me now a little bit for some connection. I'll say, hi, Annie. Yeah, you can turn and look at me. I'll connect with you. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. All right, so Laura's going to move into some detachment. Again, you see, as soon as she moves that pressure, Abilene wants to step into it. Yeah, good job, Laura, keeping it the same. Get into detachment. Annie gets a little anxious. And we see this in the pasture. That anxiety will build and it'll affect Abilene. And then they'll take off running together. Keep driving each other up the arousal continuum. So when we talk about separating these two horses, this is a way that we would maybe work into doing that in a little healthier way for them. It's where they can detach and still feel connected. See, Abilene got a little separated from Annie there, and her anxiety went up, and she had to swing back around and run back over there. So these are good places for us to work here. I'd really like them to get to a place where they can detach from each other and stay connected and both feel safe. So Laura, are you asking kind of both of them, or are you still just focused on Abilene? What's your...
Abilene.
Abilene, okay. You get them moving harmoniously, sometimes it's hard to tell.
Yeah. It's mainly just watching her, for her to stay calm and connected with me as she
Mhm.
moves around, and then sometimes she wants to see if she can get the pressure to go away by just starting to nibble on some grass or something, and loses some connection, so just ask her to connect again and move away again.
So a big part of this process for Annie, and for Abilene too, when we start getting there, is recognizing, being able to connect with the request and recognizing when somebody's putting pressure on me to do something and when somebody's not. Annie's starting to figure out a little bit that Laura's not really putting pressure on her. She's asking Abilene. Hi, Abilene. Coming to check us out over here. So I want y'all to notice I can see out here all the tension in her face. A little bit through her lips and her jaw. You can see those muscles really tight. I can't quite see her breathing from this far away. Laura, what's it like?
It's not too bad, not like last time.
It's not real shallow like it was last time. Good.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference that Abilene knows you. She's going to be a little, hopefully. That's the beautiful thing about relationship.
Is this the same person who feeds me and doesn't really ever ask anything of me?
She ought to be more comfortable with Laura because she sees her every day. So it's good to see that real heavy, shallow breathing's not there. So what happened with our connection with her?
Just now?
Yeah, so she started the kind of the biting. Didn't seem super aggressive, but still doesn't feel great, right?
Yeah.
And then she went to grazing.
Right.
So
Kind of her avoidance.
yeah.
Yeah.
So either I want to be able to do to you whatever I want to, or I'm going to disconnect a little.
There you go.
And so really trying to focus on keeping her connected in that hard time there. So there we were able to separate calmly a little bit. Which is a good step for these two. Laura's asking her to detach. So here again, when Annie feels uncomfortable. Ah. See how it got your attention on her, and then she came back and just did it right over again?
Okay.
So this is where you reinforce that behavior a little bit, right?
It's trying to actually do both at the same time.
Ah, yeah, and that's what you want to get to. Nice. Really want to see Abilene take a deep breath here. Be able to release the tension. There's a lot of tension in her ears and her muzzle.
Yeah.
Sides of her face there. Yeah. There we go. Step back, Laura. Good. Big deep breath from Abilene, which is awesome. Now she's coming in to explore again. So Laura, anytime she starts to do that, you know, the thing that happens in our body is to put up this kind of boundary.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, before she gets to a place where she might be able to hurt you, and you see her coming in to do it, put some pressure on her butt and ask her to connect instead.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see her. All the tension in her face still in her ears. Her breathing's a little shallow out there. So it's a good place to just kind of keep her connected with you and see if she can relax. Take a big deep breath, release some of that tension in her body. Oh, see, that's nice exploring, right? So now as she goes to that's what I'm talking about. So you've got to stay connected enough with her in this process that when she goes to take these bites, that you can just move and put some pressure on her butt. And so you've got to be connected enough to know in the moment what is nice, calm smelling, and when does that turn into, I think I'm going to reach out and take a little bite of you. Right? Because I like the nice, calm exploring. Does that feel good for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Miss Annie. You wanting to come over here and connect with somebody? You feeling alone? There you go, Laura. Now ask her to stay connected. You see her head's gone down. She's gone to grazing. There you go. So we see a pattern. When she doesn't get to kind of control that attachment, she then moves into this avoidant place, right? And so instead, anytime you notice her moving into that avoidant place after that, get enough pressure on her rear to try to keep her connected with you. Now Annie's starting to be able to stand there and connect and see what's going on and feel a little more secure. So really be on top of that, Laura. Anytime you notice that bite's coming, get some pressure on her butt. See how her face changes a little bit when you do that?
When I put the pressure.
Uh-huh. It brings her back into this place where she's thinking about you a little bit, not just about her.
Yeah. And her ears will go from back to forward.
And so just so we're all kind of clear on what this behavior is for Abilene, this proximity is still not really comfortable for her. And so of course our go-to in this attachment is, well, can I control it? If I can control it, it makes me feel better. And when I can't control it because it still feels uncomfortable, can I then avoid it by putting my head down, distracting myself with grazing? And instead, we're going to ask her to stay connected and learn how to stay calm and feel some comfort in this connection with us.
She just released a lot of tension in her jaw.
Yeah, so y'all can't, her butt's to you, but over here her head's come down. Oh, we got a big yawn coming. She started kind of moving those lips and working the tension out of her jaw a little bit. Took a big deep breath, so she had kind of a good release there. And then where'd she go back to?
To grazing.
Yeah.
But I haven't asked her not to.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe to switch over to Annie.
Yeah, So just recognizing her patterns, right?
Yeah.
You see them?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, now Laura said she's going to switch over and maybe do some work with Annie. That felt like a good place to leave off with Abilene. Got the big release.
She relaxed and
Yeah.
had connection with me for a few moments before she started grazing. Her ears were on me and her face was relaxed. She was yawning and took a big deep breath.
Yeah, so Laura just described all the things that happened in Abilene's body that gave her clues to Abilene's internal state. And she saw lots of big releases from Abilene. And so that felt like a good place for Laura to leave off. And so she's decided to start switching over here to do some work with Annie now. And you see, Abilene doesn't have near as big a problem here, understanding when pressure's on her and when it's not. But Annie, one of her coping mechanisms seems to be when she feels anxiety to do what? Lash out at Abilene.
Yeah.
And Abilene's saying, I'll connect with you, protect me, protect me.
Detachment's pretty uncomfortable for Annie.
Detachment is uncomfortable for Annie. And that's okay.
The very first time we, met her.
Yeah, Annie's always been one who wants to turn and look at you and snort.
Yep. Square off.
Doesn't really feel comfortable with any pressure on her body anywhere. One of the things that's real scary for Annie is to just not be looking at you head on. She's really interested in protecting that body. I really like what I see in Abilene when there's no pressure on her, nobody to connect with. Her coping mechanism is to go find somebody to connect with, which is great. So now Abilene's interfering with Annie, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you do?
Put pressure on both of them?
So it's great that Abilene wants to connect, but she also needs to recognize that you're trying to connect with Annie, right? And so, yeah, asking her to detach, just like you did, and stay connected, saying we don't have to attach to connect. Give me some space to connect with Annie. And this is where your ability to kind of connect with both at the same time comes in here. Miss Abilene, how are you? You can connect over here while they work. Yeah, you can connect with me over here while they work. Do you remember me from last week? Week? Can say yesterday, we can't say week. There's a little progress. Good. Yeah, so one thing I'm noticing, Laura,
Yeah.
when Abilene interferes, you let her push the pressure you had on Annie away instead of keeping it there and letting her deal with the consequences of walking into that pressure. So you're letting her kind of move you around her.
Well, it doesn't feel safe to me when she approaches me that closely, so I feel like we need to back her off.
Okay.
But feel free to tell me.
Yeah, I'll point it out again, and I'll give you maybe a pointer of how to move your body a little bit. And you'll see what I'm talking about. So now you see her coming. So
How do I not put pressure?
yeah, so your focus changed from Annie over to Abilene,
It did.
right?
Yeah.
I want to see her coming, and I want to stay with this request with Abilene. I might make it bigger out here
Okay.
to also keep Annie from walking over, Abilene from walking over the top of me.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because Annie's not really responding to it now either, so you need to increase it anyhow. Hi, Miss Abilene. You can come over here, Miss Abilene. Hi. There's Miss Abilene. Yeah, good, Laura. So the more you can set it up that way, that she gets to feel that pressure and move out of it too, right?
Yeah. I'd like to go over to this corner over here and see if she can get it released a little bit.
So just like Annie Abilene's got to figure out what to do with herself, where nobody's focusing any connection, pressure on her. And she's trying to connect and attach to Laura, but she's not figuring out that attaching to Laura is really not what Laura wants. And so she's got to really connect with what Laura wants, and that's just some connection through detachment. What she's also going to have to figure out is how to keep Annie from dragging her into this mess that Annie feels like she's in. That's going to be a tough thing for Abilene, because she's going to have to start making requests of Annie instead of Annie just always making requests of her. There's a little progress. I think it's important to consider, how did Abilene deal with that? And she dealt with it by going to the water trough and some of that avoidance and distraction that she goes to a lot. She's going to try that again. Not working this time. Annie's going to push her through it. Nice, Laura. Way to acknowledge Abilene, but keep going with Annie. So that time Abilene found the little mineral block instead. And again, the avoidance didn't work because Annie ran right over the top of her, pushed her off of it. Nice, Laura. Abilene standing there releasing some tension. Oh, got the yawns. It's good, Abilene. So just still working with Annie, detaching, and she's getting calmer and staying a little more connected as she's detaching, which is good. Abilene's trying to figure out what to do with herself in this mess. Annie keeps trying to drag her into the middle of it. And you're starting to see that Abilene's starting to prefer not the one who's anxious and going to drive her up the arousal continuum, but she's starting to prefer the one who's going to be calm, which is a good pattern. So what I might try, Laura, and this will require more of you, is when Abilene's in here and you're working on that detachment with her. When you see the opportunity, send Abilene one way while sending Annie the other. There's some times where you could put a little pressure on Abilene, get her to walk one way, and put pressure on Annie and get her to walk the other way. And that's going to require you to be connected in both places and making requests at the same time. Let's see what that might look like. And I wouldn't try it now because Abilene's doing a really good job of staying calm and in the middle. But when she starts feeling that need, then connect with her and ask her to go just a different way than what Annie's going even. And so you see how long that's taken you already, that you've kind of completely lost connection with Annie?
Yeah.
This is why I'm saying it's going to take more of you,
Yeah.
of figuring out how much pressure is going to be needed and how quickly,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. All right. I like how calm Abilene is.
I do too. I love how you're just not letting Annie pull her into the mix. As long as Abilene's going to stand there calm, walk around, try and keep that pressure on Annie. Annie says,
He's like, but she's pushing me. Annie's making some progress here too.
She is. Annie, you can come over here by me. Yeah, you can come over here by me in this camera. I know you're scared of me. So have you noticed that? It's a big deal, Laura.
What's the big deal?
Annie coming over here by me.
Yeah.
So ask her to step this way. See how you put pressure there and she steps in, runs into it instead of coming out away from it? There you go. Hi, Abilene. There you go. You see how she lowered? So there I'd release pressure. You kind of upped it a little bit, right?
When she took a step.
Yeah, she lowered her head. She kind of looked in towards me and stepped over here. That's definitely the response you want to that. And so when I got that, if I was you, I'd really kind of say, oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And give her some space on that. Let's see if you can get her to do it again. Yeah, Miss Annie, you can come over here. There you go. Hi. There you go. Now she's looking nice. Hi. All right, now ask her to keep stepping in over here. Nice. Oh, oh, oh. It's really hard. So just see if you can get her to walk by me. And one of the things I thought was neat in that exchange, Laura, is you were able to put pressure on Annie over Abilene.
Yeah.
And Abilene didn't feel it as pressure on her.
Luckily, Abilene's a little short.
Well, she's calm and connected enough to recognize your intent and to feel whether that pressure's on her or not. And that's really a great spot for her to be in. Yeah, you can come over here. I just put a tiny bit of pressure on Annie's butt and she looked over here. She's really worried about coming over here by me in the camera here.
That's nice. He won't bite. Yeah.
And she's having to be connected in two places at once here. This is hard for Annie. Oh, my phone's ringing.
Not so bad.
All right, we've been going probably about an hour, 10 or 15 here, Laura.
Okay.
So see if you want to find a good place.
Yeah. Oh.
And I hope all y'all out there can see, you know, when we talk about separating these horses, this is a way that we're getting to where we might be able to separate them a little bit. It's where they can feel comfortable being apart. When Abilene can stand here nice and relaxed while Annie's detaching. And hopefully, Annie can stand nice and relaxed while Abilene's detaching. And they can maintain this connection through that detachment. Because that's the way I want to eventually be able to separate these horses to work with them separately. Because when I can do that, I take away a lot of the anxiety I might have to work on once we've got them separated. If they can feel secure when they're separated, then we can go right to working on something that's a lot more productive than just dealing with the anxiety I created by separating them. And here we're starting to help them form a little bit of a healthy detachment. And we can see that Annie's got probably a little bit further to go in that than Abilene right now. Which makes sense. Up to this point, we've worked more with Abilene. She got a whole session by herself last week, just in the way that they split from each other. Starting to get some good attachment from Annie there. Abilene's nice and relaxed in the middle. Abilene's been sitting in the middle, releasing that tension, really relaxing, starting to feel okay in there. The way she just approached you for attachment was really pretty nice, which is great to see. We hope to see that continue to improve.
And Annie is just a little more difficult for her. She's used to getting things on her own terms, getting connection the way she wants it, like getting her butt scratched and all of that. But
Yeah, so it's, one of the things that can be hard with horses like this is that we think touch is going to be such an important thing for them. But what we find out is the way we get to touch is the thing that's really important for them. And Annie will let you touch her when it's her idea,
yeah,
right?
a lot, yeah.
But when it's not her idea, boy, she's really standoffish, right? When she feels any kind of stress or has to connect to any kind of request in a relationship,
Yeah,
that drives her right up the arousal continuum, right?
it does.
And
So
so,
that's where the work is with her.
yeah, so the work with her, a lot of times the way I want to get to touch is first you've got to be able to just stand looking at me. Can you look at me in a way that's calm, right? And if you can't do that, I don't want to touch you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not going to be safe. And so we worked on that a little bit last week with Abilene, is even in just this close space, can you just look at me and it'd be okay? And you see here, y'all worked on that today too, and she struggled with it a little bit still, but she's gotten better. And so that's a good place to go with Annie as well, is can you look at me in this proximity and be calm first?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Are we still filming?
yeah, so that's really good work today, Laura, with both of them. And you worked with both of them at the same time, right? And you see how their relationship plays a role in that.
Uh-huh.
And you get to kind of see some of the dynamics.
Yeah, and thank you for your help with that. That makes me feel more confident that I can come out and work with them both at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and what we're setting up now is the ability to separate them.
Right.
They're starting to detach a little bit and feel comfortable.
Right.
Abilene's in a place where right now, if you opened up a gate probably and wanted to ask Annie to detach out of that gate, Abilene would probably stay calm standing there in the middle up to some point.
Mm-hmm.
We would see pretty quickly her tolerance for how far Annie can be away. But this is how I would say we work into separating these horses to eventually start doing more focused work.
Well, thank you.
Cool. Good job.
All right.
We'll see y'all next week.